We're going to continue our discussion of special right triangles, but today we're going to look at 30, 60, 90 triangles. Now, unlike a 45, 45, 90, where we had two sides and two angles that were equal, in a 30, 60, 90, those are all different. So what we do to get a 30, 60, 90 triangle is we start with an isosceles or equilateral triangle, and we draw an altitude to bisect that triangle. But when I do, this angle at the top that was 60 now becomes two 30s. And then we're going to focus on one of those triangles. So because we have three different numbers in our triangle, we're also going to have three different side lengths in the triangle. So I'm going to call this H for the hypotenuse. I'm going to call across from the 30 the short side, because we know that across from the shortest side of a triangle is the shortest angle or the smallest angle. Across from the 60, we'll call that the long side or the long leg. Now, if I also label that in here, that's H, here's L, and this is S. Well, remember, we said we started with an equilateral triangle, which means that this whole side is the same length as that. So I know that it takes two of the short legs to equal the hypotenuse. So that's my first formula. The hypotenuse is 2 times the short leg. Then I'm going to take my triangle and I'm going to use Pythagorean theorem and do that S squared plus L squared is going to equal H squared. But we know that H is 2S. So that's going to give me S squared plus L squared equals 2S squared. But when I square a quantity in parentheses, I square both of those terms. So that becomes 4, because 2 squared is 4, S squared. Now I'm going to combine like terms and subtract an S squared from both sides. So L squared equals 4S squared minus 1S squared would be 3S squared. Then I'm going to take the square root and get that L equals the square root of 3 times the square root of S squared, which would be the square root of 3 times S, or that the long leg is the short leg times the square root of 3. So our long leg is our short leg times the square root of 3. So again, if we keep in mind that if we're going from a short side to a long side, we're going to multiply, and from a long side to a short side, we're going to divide. In a hypotenuse problem, anytime we're working with the hypotenuse in a 30, 60, 90, we're going to do something with 2, multiply or divide. If we're working with a long leg, we're going to do something with the square root of 3, either multiply or divide. So let's look at a couple examples now. So in this example, we've got to remember which one's the short side, which one's the long side, which one's the hypotenuse. So this is short, that's long, that's the hypotenuse. If the short side is 8, the hypotenuse will be twice as big. So it'll be 16. And the long side is the short side times the square root of 3. In 30, 60, 90, we use the square root of 3. In 45, 45, 90, we use the square root of 2. In the next problem, we have the long side is 12. So to get the short side, we take the long side and divide by square root of 3. Now, if I put that in my calculator, I'll see that that is 4 square root of 3. So the short side is 4 square root of 3. But then to get the hypotenuse, I'm going to take that and multiply by 2, double it. Well, that would be 8 square root of 3. In my next problem, I have the hypotenuse is 8 square root of 3. Well, if that's true, then the short side had to be half as big. 4 square root of 3. Notice I put that across from the 30. But then the long side will be the short side times the square root of 3. So if I do 4 square root of 3 times square root of 3, and I put that in my calculator, I'll get 12. And in my last problem, we're going to complete the table. So let's look at our picture and decide what we have. The 30 across from it, side D, is going to be my short side. Across from the 60, side E, is going to be my long side. And across from the 90 is my hypotenuse. So in the first column, if the short side is 2, then the long side is 2 times the square root of 3. And the hypotenuse is twice the short side. Both of my formulas for 30, 60, 90s, if you look back, both of those formulas use the short side. So you're always going to be doing something with the short side. So to get the hypotenuse, I would do 2 times the short side, which would be 4. Now in the next problem, I know the hypotenuse is 10. If the hypotenuse is 10, then the short side would be half as big, it'd be 5. And then to get the long side, I'm going to multiply because I'm going from short to long. And I'd multiply by the square root of 3. In my next column, think of this as being 1 square root of 3. Then to get to the short side, I would take 1 square root of 3 and divide by square root of 3, which will make those cancel, just become 1. And if the short side is 1, the hypotenuse is always 2 times as big. So it's going to be 2. The next column has the hypotenuse as 22 square root of 3. Then the short side is half as big. So it's 11 square root of 3. And then to get the long side, we take 11 square root of 3 times the square root of 3, which will be 11 square root of 9, which is 11 times 3, or 33. You also could have done that with a calculator. And then on the last problem, we have 15 for the long leg. So to get to short, we know we're going to divide because we're going from a longer to a shorter side. So I take 15 and divide by the square root of 3. When I do that, I'm going to get 5 square root of 3. So that means that my short side is 5 square root of 3. But the hypotenuse is twice as big, so it's going to be 10 square root of 3.